So dear students, I welcome you to my class and I wish you good afternoon. In the last class, we were acquainted with some major characters of the text, Things Fall Apart. And today I like to continue the discussion on the characters of Things Fall Apart. We know that it's a Nigerian text, that is the text produced by a Nigerian writer, Chinua Achebe. And it's his masterpiece. And you may also call this text a representative text of African literature. Because while you will go through this text, you will have an opportunity to peep through different aspects of African life, the experiences of the Africans, their rituals, their belief system, and their reaction or response to the colonial enterprises. This is a complicated text because in this text, the protagonist, whom you will meet, is not a flat character. He is a round character. He goes through different changes of his life. He goes through different experiences of his life. And ultimately, he meets his tragedy. So the realities that led him to his tragedy are to be examined from historical perspective. Then he will understand the response of the Africans towards colonial enterprise. So in my last class, I told you about Okonkwo, the protagonist of this text. He was the leader of 9 villages, and he was a man of title. And throughout his life, he was afraid of becoming an Agbala, that is a lazy man, a man next to a woman. And Okonkwo, throughout his life, hated his father, Unoka, who was a lazy man, who was called a man of a flute, because he did not cultivate his land. He did never work hard. He did never participate in a battle. He was afraid of bloodshed. And ultimately, his whole body was swollen. That is, he was infected by a disease. So according to the ritual or according to the cultural practices, Unoka was left in the evil forest and he died there. And while Unoka died, he left nothing for his wife and children. That is, he was a penniless person. And Okonkwo did not inherit anything from his father. So he was very, very angry with his father. Okonkwo was a very angry man, and he was locally called the Wildfire. Okonkwo was called Wildfire because of his anger. And he was not a fluent speaker. He used to stammer. And while he could not speak well or fluently, he could use his hands very violently. So he was a man of wrath. He was very angry and he was aggressive also. Then we have to know another character, Noe. Noe is Okonkwo's eldest son. And Okonkwo was not satisfied with his son because he thought that his son was not like him. And he could discover the reflection of his father, that is Unoka, in the character of Noe. And Noe ultimately was converted into a Christian. He left his father's side, joined the missionary, and he became a trainer. He also got his name changed. He took up the name Isaac, and he gave up his clan's name, Noe. So Okonkwo was not happy with his son, and he always thought that his daughter, Ejinma, should have been born as a boy. So Noe's conversion into a Christian was accelerated or stimulated by some incidents. For example, the killing of Ikemefuna, the foster child of Okonkwo, who called Okonkwo father, was killed by Okonkwo himself. Actually, it was the instruction of Chielo. Chielo is the priestess of the locality. And Chielo once ordered Okonkwo that Ikemefuna would have to be sacrificed to the altar of gods and goddesses. And the village, the eldest man of the village, or the oldest man of the village, Izuudu, once came to Okonkwo's household and he prohibited Okonkwo to participate in the killing mission of the boy. But Okonkwo thought that if he did not participate in the killing of the boy, that would be a mark of his effeminacy, or that would be a mark of his weakness. Just to prove himself to be masculine, or just to prove himself to be a courageous man, a violent man, he disobeyed the oldest man's prohibition, and he participated in the killing mission, and he himself killed the boy by cutting off his head. So that very incident left a very deep scar in the mind of Noe, because Noe was very close to Ikemefuna. Ikemefuna sometimes used to tell him stories that he learned from his own village and own culture. So Ikemefuna shared his joys, delight, experiences with Noe, and Noe learned a lot of things from Ikemefuna. He developed a profound intimacy with him. But that very Ikemefuna was killed by Okonkwo. So Noe could not take it easy. Actually, Noe was different from his father regarding his humanistic attitude. In Noe, you will find human abstracts or human characteristics. For example, he was soft-hearted. Now, I like to give you an example of his soft-heartedness. You know that the twins are usually left in the evil forest. In Igbo culture, if twins are born, then the local culture publishes that it's an ominous incident. It brings calamity to the family. So according to the custom, these twins are taken into a pot, and these twins are left in the evil forest. This is also an inhuman practice according to Noe. So Noe, while walking by the evil forest, hears the cry of those twins inside the evil forest. And he could not understand why this inhuman practice was done by the Igbos. So he was really moved by that very inhuman or heartless incident. So this very example is enough to prove Noe to be a soft-hearted boy. Actually, he was a kind and merciful boy. But kindness, mercy, love, these are the weakest passions in the eyes of Okunko. For that reason, Okunko always thought that Noi was not a man, he was an Agbala. Agbala means effeminate or woman. So Novi ultimately was impressed by the sermons of the missionary. He used to visit the churches. And you will find in the second part of this novel, while Okonko was living in Mubanta in exile, during the second visit of Obirika, Okonko's very good and intimate friend, Obirika made two visits in the second part of this novel. He visits his friend Okonko in Mubanta. In the first visit, he was very happy, and Okonko was also very, very happy. Their meeting was a very hilarious moment. But the second meeting was not happy enough because during the second visit, Obireka informed Okonko that he saw his son Noe mixing with the converts or mixing with the Christians, the white men. So Okonko was angry and he waited for his son to return home. So at night, while Noe came back home, Okonko jumped upon him with his stick and he started thrashing him to death. Then Noe's mother and other wives of Okonko came forward and rescued Noe. After that very incident, Noe left the house never to return. He did never come back. So he left his father and his family forever. But he had a determination that in course of time he would come back and he would try his best to convert his mother and his sisters. But we do not find this very activity of Noe in this text. So Noe's conversion was a significant incident because it left a kind of trauma on the mind of Okonko. Then Ejinma, it is another character. Ejinma is the daughter of Okonko and Ekwefi, that is Okonko's second wife. Ejinma is called the beauty of the village. She is as beautiful as her mother was many years ago. And Okonko does not find a suitable boy for her because Okonko thought that the boy who would marry Ejinma should be the man of title. But he could not find a suitable boy for Ejinma in Mubanta. So he decided that after 7 years, while he would go back to his village Umofia, he would marry off his daughter. Ejinma was very much caring towards her father, and she was very sympathetic. She could understand Okonko's mind. For that reason, very often, Okonko thought that Ejinma should have been a boy. Then Ikemefuna. This is the foster child, or foster boy of Okonko's family. And in my last class, I told you the history of Ikemefuna. Ikemefuna belonged to the neighboring village. But very unfortunately, a woman of Umofia was killed by a man of the neighboring village. So as a part of the compensation process, Ikemefuna was offered by that neighboring village to Umofia for sacrifice. But Ikemefuna was very small, and at that time he did not understand why he was offered to the village Umofia. At first, he was very, very shocked and he used to cry frequently. But in course of time, he developed intimacy with Okonko's family and he started calling Okonko father. And this very boy was very helpful to the family because he helped Okonko in different works in the field and in the household. And he also developed intimacy with Okonko's eldest son, Noe. And from Ikemefuna, Noe learned lots of things. He learned the myths of the neighboring community. He also learned how to make different things, or he also learned the names of different things from Ikemefuna. So Ikemefuna was a very important character. And Okonko ultimately killed him. He killed him because he thought that it was a part of his uh, duty to his custom. Chielo, the priestess, once called Okonko that he should kill the boy or sacrifice the boy. So Okonko sacrificed the boy. That is, once he told Ikemefuna that he would go to a neighboring village for an important meeting, and Ikemefuna would have to accompany him. So some other persons of the village, Okonko and Ikemefuna, started for that village. Actually, it was a concoction. It was a false story. But Ikemefuna could not understand. So he accompanied Okonko and the other people of the village. And very soon we find that while they were passing through a jungle, a man from behind attacked Ikemefuna. And Ikemefuna rushed to Okonko for help. And he told, "Father, the man has killed me." Then Okonko did not wait for a single moment. He brought out his dagger and cut off the head of Ikemefuna. So why did Okonko do it? Okonko did it because he did not prove that he was as weak as his father. That is, throughout his life, Okonko was haunted by the memories of his father, Unoka, who was womanly in his eyes. But Okonko is a character full of dilemmas. Okonko is a character full of contradictions. How? Actually, to prove his masculinity, he killed Ikemefuna. But after killing Ikemefuna, while he came back home, he could not sleep at night and he could not take his meals for 2 days. So why? Because his mind was haunted by the memories of Ikemefuna. So this very behavior of Okonko exposes his weakness. So Okonko actually is putting on a mask of masculinity, but actually he cannot overcome the weakness which he throughout his life fears. So thus we find a dichotomy. There is a kind of contrast or contradiction in his character. That is, he is afraid of becoming weak, but he is not able to shake off his weakness or shake off his human kindness. Thus we find that Ikemefuna's character helps the readers understand Okonko's character also. So Ikemefuna's character helps us understand Okonko, and it also, this character also helps us to know Okonko's tragic flaw. So what is Okonko's tragic flaw? Okonko throughout his life is afraid of becoming an Akbala because he thought that to become an Akbala was to become Novak. That was his apprehension. And throughout his life, he guarded himself against that very weak passion. But unfortunately, if you think of the last scene of this novel, you will find that Okonkwo commits suicide. So why does he commit suicide? He commits suicide because he was afraid that he might have been arrested by the white men and he might have been killed by them. So to escape that punishment, he hanged himself. So his suicide is not an exposure of his chivalry. It is not an exposure of his heroism. It's an exposure of his cowardice. It's an exposure of his apprehension. So he's afraid of facing the consequence of what he has done. So thus we find that Okonkwo's character is a very complicated character. You cannot call it a flat character. You cannot call it a flat character. Flat character means the character which does not undergo significant changes throughout the plot of the novel. And round character means the character which goes through different changes and different vicissitudes of his life. So we find that Okonkwo's character is a round character because he is experiencing different changing situations of his life, and in connection with those changes, he is changing himself. So we have to approach this character, especially the character of Okonkwo, very critically. Now, Mr. Brown is a Christian priest or missionary. He is very tolerant. He is very much communicating with the people of Igbo community. And Mr. Brown is very interested to know the pantheon of the people with whom he is living. And he is accommodated. He is not aggressive or he is not intolerant. Suppose in the second part of this novel, you will find that Mr. Brown goes to a neighboring village and there he meets a priest there. The name of the priest, Igbo priest, is Akunna. And he is communicating with Akunna about gods and goddesses and belief system of the Igbos. And he is trying to defend his Christian God. And Akunna is also trying to defend his own pagan god. And Mr. Brown does not confiscate the pantheon of the local people. He is just trying to convince. He does not believe in confiscation. He believes in convincing the people. That is Mr. Brown's very positive aspect of his character. And unfortunately, Mr. Brown lives Umofia. So why? Because he was seriously ill and the physician advised him to leave Africa and go back to his country for the recovery of his health. So anyway, Mr. Brown went away or went back to his country, and in his place there came Reverend Smith, who was quite opposite to him. So now look at the picture. He's Mr. Smith. He is also a priest, Christian priest. So in Brown's place he came, and he was quite opposite. And we know that he was uncompromising. And that very uncompromising personality was a kind of instigation to the local converts. You may find a local convert. His name is Enoch, Enoch. Enoch was enamored by the personality of Mr. Smith, James Smith. And Enoch once killed the sacred python. The sacred python, you know that python is a very dangerous snake to us. But python is a god to the local communities of Africa. And in their eyes, this is sacred, and they do not affect or they do not attack the python. But Enoch, being instigated by Mr. Smith, killed the sacred python and ate up the flesh of it. Not only that, in the celebration of Igu Igu, you know that Igu Igu is a group of or is a band of masked people, and the people who put on masks believe that they are different. They are no more the flesh and blood, because mask in African culture is a symbol of communication between this mundane world and the spiritual world. And they also believe that while a person puts on masks, through him the ancestral spirits speak. So the man who puts on mask is not an ordinary man. And these masked people create a band, and this band is called Igu Igu. And Enoch once unmasked an Igu Igu. And not only that, he humiliated him. And the local Igbo people believed that he killed one of the sacred spirits. So the people got furious. Okonko, after coming back from Bantha after 7 years of his exile, so while he came back to his village, Umofia, got furious. So these Igu Igu went to the church which was constructed in the Evil Forest, in a piece of land of Evil Forest. The church was destroyed. And after that, 5 leaders of Igbo community were arrested and they were taken to the custody. They were imprisoned behind the bar. Not only that, they were also humiliated. Their heads were shaved and they were fined. That is, they had to pay 250 cowries for each as compensation. So that was really a kind of humiliation to Okonko. Okonko was also arrested and his head was also shaved. So all these things were done, or things fall apart like situation was created after James Smith took up the authority of the church, and he took up the responsibility of converting the local people into Christians. And we know that conversion was not a speedy process, or it was not a direct process. Conversion was a passive process because the Christians came from European countries. They set up schools, they communicated with the people, and they told them that they have their God, and their God is different from the God of the local people. So they set up their church. And we know the process of setting up a church in Umofia. That is, once some people came to the leader of the community for a piece of land to set up their church. Then the local leaders thought that they should teach the Christians a good lesson. So they decided to provide a piece of land for the Christians in the Eden Forest, because they had a conviction that if they went there in the Eden Forest, the spirits there, the ancestral spirits living there, would kill all of them. So they would not have to do anything. Their job would be done by their ancestral spirits. So the Christians were happy. They thanked them and went back to the Evil Forest and set up a tent. And the local people started waiting for the market week. We know that in Igbo society, 4 days make a market week. 4 days. In our culture, 7 days make a week. But in Igbo culture, 4 days make a market week. So they started for 4 days, but nothing happened to the Christians. Then the local people thought that the Christian God was powerful, more powerful than the local God. So the success of survival of the Christians was a great impact upon the local people. So many local people were converted after seeing that the Christians were not destroyed. even if they were living in the evil forest, because the local people thought that the spirits living in evil forest would kill them. But very unfortunately, or to their dismay, they found that they were not killed by the ancestral spirit. Then they developed a kind of assumption that the God with whom the Christians came to their country was more powerful than their local gods and goddesses. So that very uh, belief or that very assumption brought about a dramatic change in Igbo society. Many people, even with high titles, went to the missionaries and they were converted into Christians. So all these things happened very rapidly during the authority of James Smith. Then another character, Uchendu. Uchendu is the maternal uncle of Okunko. We know that while Okunko was exiled from his village after killing a boy of 16, then Okunko, along with all other members of his family, came to Mubanta, the neighboring village, the village of his mother. And there, Uchendu gave him a piece of land for building a house. He also gave him some pieces of some plots of land, agricultural land to grow yam. And he also cooperated Okonko wholeheartedly so that he could become a self-reliant man. And he also supported Okonko every now and then mentally and financially. Even Uchendu's sons and daughters helped Okonko and they received Okonko very cordially. So Uchendu was really a helpful man for Okonko. And from Uchendu, the readers, hear many stories, myths of Igbo society. Uchendu is an aged man, so very often he tries to console Okonko with reference to some myths and folk tales. So thus we find that Chinua Achebe very competently bring about a kind of juxtaposition between European language, that is English language, and Igbo elements, for example, idioms, then myths, folk tales, gods and goddesses. So this is really done very miraculously, excellently, marvelously in this text. And this admixture of Igbo culture, Igbo syntax of language, and English language, that is European language, this synthesis between these two different things has brought about a new dimension, an excellent dimension in this text. Okay. Then district commissioner. We meet this character towards the end of this novel. We know that Okonko, out of rage, slaughtered a court messenger. And after that, he discovered that none of his village men was with him. Then, out of dismay, he ran to his house, and there he hanged himself with a tree. And afterwards, for killing the court messenger, the district commissioner, along with some guards, went to the house of Okonko, and there he wanted to arrest Okonko. But Obierika, Okonko's friend, informed the district commissioner that Okonko had killed himself, that is, he hanged himself. So Okonko died. And district commissioner was also informed by Obierika that Okonko met a very disgraceful death and he would not get due burial. That is, he had met the death of a dog, or fate of a dog. So thus we find that Okonkwo ultimately was transformed into a Zero, who was a hero towards the beginning of this novel. So thus in this way we find that it is a tragedy. This novel is